afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the December 9th, 2022 edition of News from the Front Lines of Business by DW Huff Consulting. David Huff, CPA here, and trying to help everybody kind of know their numbers so that they can grow their numbers. So here we are with another week. Decent amount of stuff going on in the news, so let's kind of just jump right in here. So, but before we even start that, a thought came to mind here. So we're getting into the holiday season. So we know we just came back from, things kind of slowed down a little bit recently for Thanksgiving. So I guess it's worth a reminder here that as we're getting into some of the days off and stuff like that, to as a business owner, don't get complacent. Don't take your foot off the gas. Because I'm just noticing that myself. We worked pretty hard that Thanksgiving week, but we did take a few days off and then the whole weekend, and you're noticing that as you're looking at the as the bank balances this past week, as we paying bills, that little bit of a kind of backing off on the pace definitely is noticeable. So even though it's the holidays and know that I need to take off, don't take your foot off the gas. That's as a small business owner, you can never ever let up. I saw that somewhere on a TikTok or somewhere this past week by a small business consultant, and I thought I needed to write that down and re-emphasize that, because as a small company, there's nobody going to pick up the slack for you if you take it easy. So, but anyway, so after that though, news. So this past week we got some big news. If you've been following the Donald Trump saga, he had a criminal case going on for a long time now. That just now reached a conclusion, and basically what it involved wasn't tax fraud, I guess, like tax evasion at the corporate level. So if you look at the headlines, it could be a little bit, I guess, misleading, because depending on which news outlet you're looking at, someone gonna try to paint Trump as a criminal here, and criminal tax evasion mastermind. Others are going to downplay it. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But what is at the root of this case here? So there's multiple entities involved, but Trump has his kids on payroll, some pretty high level executives, and in addition to that, normal paychecks, so they work, show up, get the salary. But the Trump organization also owns some property. So in one case, one of the executives had lived rent-free in a very expensive apartment overlooking some, one of the high rent districts in New York City. So when you receive something like that, something of value, you're supposed to pick that up on your W-2 and pay tax on it. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what happened. What they did. So basically, they did. I almost said they did not do. So they did not put the stuff on a W-2. In addition to use of various assets owned by various Trump organizations, there were some personal expenses paid on behalf of the company, from the company's money on behalf of the employees, and that were never reported as taxable income. So I guess the root of the problem is that the Trump organization didn't include those numbers in taxable income. So basically, they treated it as over some sort of pre-tax fringe benefit, like maybe a health insurance payment or something of that nature. So that's the way they went along with it. So the argument here is that there was a CFO who was basically controlling all those things. Donald Trump signed a lot of those checks. So the argument they had no knowledge of it whatsoever. Make your own decision there. But how convenient is it that these kind of things happen, and the individuals didn't have to pay tax on it. Now, it's unclear to me whether the company took deductions for these payments. So I think in a lot of cases they probably didn't. Otherwise, I think there'd be a lot more scrutiny from the IRS and the Fed. So since it's a local, it seemed like at a state and city level in New York, as opposed to a federal level, it seems like there probably was no misapplication of the rules at the federal, at the business level, so they didn't deduct those things, but it looked like they didn't include it in income on the recipient level. So so that's the gist of that. So I don't know, but they definitely got in the fine. So 1.6 million bucks worth of fines there. When you think about it over the number of years, it's this trial covered a number of years, several years. It wasn't just 1 year. So you got 1 year, a lot of big people, and all in all, 1.6 million worth of penalties. Kind of tells me, in the grand scheme of things, this is kind of a minor issue. And and I guess I kind of wonder, what's the real motivation for going after the Trump organization here? But based on that, this doesn't seem like something that makes the news very often. I suspect this is probably not that uncommon, but I don't see it in the news very often. So it's a little bit suspicious as to what generated the actual litigation. So, but it's over now. They got to pay some fines, and we'll see what happens. After that, so another thing that's been popping up. So we're getting close to year end here, and we know you may have noticed a while back there was some talk that IRS is going to require Venmo and PayPal and those kind of payment organizations to report everybody who received more than $600 to the IRS. So it looks on the surface that more people are going to be getting 1099s than normal. So Venmo and PayPal are used very frequently and commonly to send money, splitting a restaurant bill, and then just personal stuff going back and forth that isn't really wouldn't normally be a taxable transaction. So, but if you dig into this a little bit more, this slide I put up here comes right from Venmo's website actually, and they go on to kind of clarify a little bit more about what exactly is going to generate the possibility of you receiving a 1099 form with income on it. And what it kind of boils down to is that when you make a payment, you have a selection there where you're going to be, when you put in a recipient, you get to choose whether or not it's for goods and services or if it's just some other kind of non-taxable friend-to-friend kind of transaction there. So if that is selected, then that amount is going to be tracked in Venmo's system as a payment for goods and services, and once it exceeds $600, a 1099 form will be issued. So I guess you got to be careful there, if it's not a good or service. So, and I think a lot of people who are setting these things up could easily make a mistake and think that it's for a good or service, not understanding what's going on there. It may be a personal payment where you're reimbursing somebody for your kid's T-shirt for some event at school. You might think that's a good, right? I'm reimbursing somebody for a thing. You may check the box erroneously for goods and service, and then now your friend could conceivably have a tax form to deal with at the end of the year. And they go on to mention that if you do get one of the forms and it is in error, they don't want you, they want you first to try and clarify and correct it with the vendor. So you have to go back to Venmo and have them fix it. If that's not possible, in order to avoid problems, you would need to report that on your tax return and then back it out with a line item kind of negating that effect as showing it as an error. So so if it's not a good in service, you should not get a form. But just who knows what's going to end up happening with the way that the information is tracked at Venmo or PayPal or any of them actually. So so expect that you may get an unexpected 1099, and don't ignore it. Deal with it by reporting it and then backing it out to show that it should not be taxable. Because generally the 1099 form is if you're an online vendor or you're receiving a payment for doing some work for somebody, a contract or something of that nature. That's where you would pay tax on it. But if you're just a regular, individual, non-self-employed, just reimbursing, then it doesn't come. So I guess the answer is it sounds more scary than it is. It sounds like the IRS is collecting more data than they are, but depending on how the users of these payment platforms is going to determine how much more data is out there for the IRS to possibly receive. So anyway, all right. So closing thoughts. So another week in the bag here. So this past week, December 7th, is Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. So I spent a little time just going back and look at some of the history there, and I guess it reminds you how just when you look at all the casualties, how bad war is on both sides. So I also over the years I've become more, I guess, aware of Japan's point of view and everything, and some things that the United States did that probably provoked them a little bit to feel a need to attack and jump into this whole conflict. And Yeah, so I'm not saying it's right or wrong in any capacity, but um, it's just bad. So love your country, fear your government. Kind of that quote comes to mind here because all these young men fighting each other and dying over this stuff, and when you dig into it in a lot more detail, um, you see how unnecessary a lot of that stuff probably really was at the end of the day. So with that, enjoy your weekend, and we'll see you out here next week.